Zombies have been a hit with horror fans for a long while now, with modern depictions of the concept stemming from Richard Matheson's novel I Am Legend in 1954, which went on to inspire a wave of American media ranging from movies to music to video games. Many earlier zombie games tended to be direct tie-ins or inspirations driven from films such as Dawn of the Dead, but would later evolve to become their own beasts, with the House of the Dead and Resident Evil being key in showcasing what more modern zombie video games could be. The genre began to grow steadily from there, with elements of the Living Dead being ingratiated into more and more games. The late aughts is when things really seemed to explode for undead-focused games, with Dead Rising leading the charge and Dead Space, Left 4 Dead, and World at War zombie mode coming in hot in 2008. The call of the living dead had infected gaming, and soon seemingly everywhere you looked had some depiction of zombies permeating the media. In fact, from 1982 through 2007, there were just over 60 games that revolved specifically around zombies. In the 6 years from 2008 through 2013, there were around 70. And from 2014 onward, there's been about 25 zombie-centric games. The undead trend hit video games hard and wore people out in a small span of time, tiring the concept out for many gamers even to this day. Rockstar took an interest in this trend right in the middle of its heyday, claiming a long-standing desire to create a game with the undead being a focal point. So they had their San Diego division begin to develop this concept alongside Red Dead Redemption, utilizing the game's familiar background as the setting for a zombie outbreak. Pair the gritty Great Plains setting with the slow-mo Deadeye mechanic and the fact that John Marston was the most likely to be willing to hunt down zombies, and you had the best recipe that Rockstar could muster for something this far off the beaten path. Undead Nightmare was then released 5 months after the base game and 5 days before the Walking Dead TV series. Its timing perfect to continue to churn out more content of the dead coming back to life. Reception of the DLC was outstanding, with solid 8 to 10 scores across the board. Its legacy going down as one of the best expansions for a video game ever. For me, Undead Nightmare was just more Red Dead Redemption, but with a twist. And that was all I wanted after completing the base game at the time. I had a blast and I moved on, the memory becoming a faint good time that I had. But as the years went on and we saw the likes of Dead Island, DayZ, 7 Days to Die, Dying Light, and so on and so on and so forth, I got completely burnt out of the genre, much like many others did. There are few games that feature the undead that keep me entertained nowadays, and I have to wonder if Undead Nightmare just came before that dilution or if it was genuinely good. So in this video, I'll be taking a look at Red Dead Redemption Undead Nightmare and seeing if its plot, characters, and mechanics still hold true today. Before I begin, I'll note that I have a sponsor with Factor around the 15-ish minute mark, so try not to be too alarmed. So Undead Nightmare kicks off before the canonical ending of the vanilla game. John's doing his farm work, his wife and son left at home relaxing. This entire setup takes cues from classic horror films, creating a predictable but fun scene to watch as it leads you into the gameplay. As John senses that something seems to be wrong outside, Uncle comes rolling in, zooted out of his mind. Marston reacts exactly as you would expect, clobbering the old man and running to grab his gun. This leads to Abigail getting bitten before John puts the old man down with a shot to the head. Well, our guy isn't willing to blast his wife in the head too, so he hog-ties her after she bites Jack also.
Probably just a fever. Jack, be kind to your mother. Abigail, teach the boy right from wrong. Both of you. Stop biting chunks out of people.
Yeah, Undead Nightmare tends to do humor really well, mixing that independent classic horror cinematography with campy one-liners that don't seem out of place. With the two secured as best as they can be, John rolls out into the night to find a doctor to hopefully cure this new kind of flu. So far, the gameplay is the same as ever, but everything is tweaked to be a bit more stylized, with the menus and parts of the interface taking on a sickly green hue instead of the typical red. Making your way into town has the scholar from before being eaten alive by his Native American companion, and a woman pulling you aside to hand you a torch to burn the dead with. Honestly, the atmosphere is done really well. The typical Western soundtrack washed away in exchange for a more horror-centric set of sound effects and tunes that keep you on edge. The whole world is this foggy, hazy mix of gray for now, the sounds of the undead prowling and patrolling the streets. You can't buy ammo, so every shot counts, making the torch as a melee weapon a lot more important for conserving your munitions. This ammunition conservation lasts all of, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes, as you'll have all of the ammo that you need just from playing through the DLC. It helps that the zombies die from one shot to the head with nearly any weapon, but it also means that the guns that usually have high power in exchange for a low magazine are now worthless when compared to the medium power weapons with large mags. It makes the balance of the DLC feel a little weird, and I find myself occasionally using the fun explodey weapons for big fights, but the regular no-frills ones for the other 90%. The first mission has us cleansing a graveyard where zombies just keep popping up until you torch the coffins in the area. It's tempting to try to make things safe before proceeding, but the best approach seems to be just kiting and torching, making things pretty tense when the undead get close. Of course, we were in the era of Left 4 Dead, and normal zombies weren't quite satisfactory enough. So the game tosses its first special at you, the Bruiser, which takes a few more bullets and will charge you if you get too close. The music starts mixing in the ambient horror strings with the moody guitar riffs and upbeat drums that the vanilla game touts, which turned out to be cooler than I thought it would. I think it was this track that really started to make John feel less like a random survivor and more like the savior of the Great Plains in this dire time. The tasks from here open up into protection missions which have you clearing out towns to make them temporarily safe and allow you to save your game and access ammo caches, which, well, they're full of ammo if you would believe it. You'll also gain access to new weapons which are pretty fun in their own right and include the likes of tomahawks which have a shockingly low range, holy water that incapacitates zombies, and boomer bile that can be upgraded into a pipe bomb. Look, you can only get so original with this stuff. Clearing out and protecting new towns is actually kind of fun, almost like a more focused version of the enemy outposts from the vanilla game. I'm not huge on town protection missions. I think Fallout 4 ruined that for me with its settlement system, but this one is done well enough for me to want to clear them out initially and occasionally rush to those in need. You do wind up unlocking a weapon every time you do the initial clearing, which tends to be a nice pickup or total garbage for zombie killing specifically. Survivors are at each other's throats, utilizing a unique mix of ignorance and hostility to hoist the blame onto whichever group they have the most ire for. But they do give you a few leads. Wes Dickens, the snake oil salesman, and Seth, Seth. We'll get to them in a moment. First, there's a few strangers missions outside of those leads that are more well-rounded and interesting than the majority of the ones that showed up in the main game. This is almost certainly due to the fact that the game can now use crazier ideas and build off of them, such as the Sasquatch quest. This one has you hunting down 6 Sasquatches in the hills up to the north, most of which pay homage to the myth and try to run away instead of fighting you. The hunt alone is thrilling due solely to the fact that you're out here alone in these zombie-filled hills, consistently watching your back from the DLC's host of new variants. Undead dogs, cougars, bears, and boars fly at you out of nowhere. Even the dead deer and horses might make you jump, even if they don't attack. If you're bad at traversing mountains like I am, you'll likely lose your main horse, but that means that it'll be replaced by an undead horse. The undead horse is faster, has infinite stamina, and is fueled by 20 gallons of Pabst Blue Ribbon and NyQuil, causing it to veer suddenly left or right at the drop of a hat and making me somehow look worse at video games. Is it worth it? No, probably not, but it does make you look like you're being chased by a ghost at all times. There are better horses though, all of which represent a facet of the apocalypse. War, famine, pestilence, and I'm leaning towards American Congress or something. Each one has a unique power to them, like incapacitating zombies, lighting them on fire, making their heads explode, or, well, the last one just runs faster, so not Congress. I only wound up getting War, so you can just watch War run around on screen, I guess. The whole experience makes horse tracking something that I actually want to do in the DLC though, which is a far cry from my feelings on trying to wrangle them in the base game. When you get to the final Sasquatch, it leans against a tree, unmoving.
Shoot me, human! Shoot me!
Oh, I will, you foul creature of the night.
You'd be granting me peace.
Why's that? Keep you from eating more babies?
What in the name of all that's right are you talking about, human? We eat berries and mushrooms, you fool! But we did. Now none of us are left. Some maniac's been murdering us. My family is gone. My kind is gone. Shoot me. I can't take it anymore. Make it stop.
And now I feel bad for a made-up creature in a made-up video game. Jesus Christ, man. I usually save the best stuff for last, but I kinda started with it this time. The other side quests nearly all have you meeting with people that you interacted with in the main story. There's the director who was trying to build a movie set. I mean, I never talked about him in my other video, but he did try to do that, I assure you. And the guy sees all of this chaos as an opportunity to try to create an amazing horror film, and requests that John bring him a spitter. Well, I guess they're called retchers here. John sighs in defeat after calling the man a nutjob. It's like he knows the dipshit player is gonna make him go through with it. The end result, well, it has the guy getting eaten alive by zombies while John just kinda watches him after stating that he only did this to help out an old friend. Next we meet up with Bonnie, whose dad went into the barn to round up the undead plaguing it. Yeah, he's not doing too good. I love how John sits here and ties up his wife and kid in the hopes of curing this thing, and then is like, ah shit, oh well, Drew McFarlane was a good man. And then just kinda kills him. Side note, the sniper rifle is a fun idea for killing off undead, but I can't aim for shit with the controller. What's funny though is that getting right up to a zombie with a weapon usually has you performing an instant kill animation, making the sniper ammo useful for an almost guaranteed kill if you use it as a melee weapon. Next up we have the Marshal and his two goofball deputies, who have gotten themselves into a jam as you might expect.
You seen a couple deputies nearby? Marshall's boys, Jonah and Eli.
Are they Jews, mister? They sound like Jews.
I don't know. Why?
Well, I don't like Jews. Or colored folk. Or natives, now that you mention it. I bet you like Catholics. I can't stand them neither. Nor women. Fabians, socialists, homosexuals, Asians, or British. Between them, they've ruined this country. Ruined it. It was a good country once. Now people are eating each other, and it's all the fault of the Jewish, British, Catholic, homosexual elite and their ideas.
Okay, that guy had nothing to do with anything, but that's okay because the reveal for this whole quest is that the two deputies are zombified. And Marston does what he does best before reporting back to the Marshal, who doesn't seem to be that torn up about it. And finally, in terms of prior characters popping back up in side missions, is Landon Ricketts. Landon's area is the only town on the map besides the two forts that happens to have been completely cleared of undead by the time you get to it, which is a fantastic move that continues to paint the man as legendary.
You know, John, I've lived a long life. I've seen this land when it was just wilderness and scrub. I've seen missionaries nailed to crosses by shaman and burn into just the cinders of their misguided devotion. I've seen slaves get set free. I've seen diseases wipe out entire communities. I've seen bad men. I've seen men struggle. I've killed all that can be killed. But I've never, in all my natural-born days, seen anything quite like this.
Okay, that probably could have used some editing, but the guy's still cool as hell. He's the one who thinks to combine the zombie bait and dynamite, netting you the Left 4 Dead pipe bomb. There's not much more to him here, but it's a fun interaction nonetheless. There are some missing persons quests, which are really just the DLC's versions of bounties. They weren't interesting enough for me to continue doing, but they do pad the expansion out a bit more. They kind of fit in with the other global tasks of hunting a certain amount of undead, finding all of these special horses, and so on. Overall though, I feel like most of the Stranger's tasks were well done and trimmed down to the essentials. I didn't really feel like I was playing through anything that was thrown in there for the sake of extending the game, and even would have liked to have seen more appearances from Irish or the FBI boys. When I'm wanting more at the end of it, that's probably a good gauge of these secondary objectives not overstaying their welcome. Alright, before I head over to the main story stuff, I want to talk about my sponsor, Factor. I know, short video for me. So I was raised on TV dinners for a good chunk of my youth, mostly because they were just convenient for my parents who worked all day. The big downside there was obviously the nutrition, or lack thereof. And as I've gotten older and tend to spend a large chunk of my own day working on videos, I understand the TV dinner idea more. With Factor, I can still have the convenience of that type of quick and easy meal while still retaining the healthy nutritional value in what I eat. Actually, I can technically get them done even quicker than the old TV dinner since they're ready to eat and average a 2 minutes or less cook time. Factor's owned by HelloFresh now, who I've worked with in the past. And while I still enjoy HelloFresh, what I like about Factor is that it offers lunches to go, options that are less calorie intense, ones that provide extra protein for those hitting the gym, and even seasonal options like this fall's menu. I particularly enjoyed the spicy poblano beef bowl myself. These guys make some good food that has all of the information right on the box, which is perfect for me personally. I tend to approach what I eat like a science when I'm dieting, dissecting everything down to the calorie value. So Factor is fantastic when I'm trying to puzzle together the last meal of the day and I have anywhere from 500 to 800-ish calories left. If any of this sounds like something that you could use in your own life, feel free to head to factor75.com and click the link below or use the code SALT50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Thanks guys. Alright, so on to the main meat of the DLC, starting with Seth. So Seth is, he's just in his lane. Moisturized, happy, flourishing. I mean, the guy's been digging up corpses since before it was in style. So he's just vibing and even has a zombie friend. John follows the rumor of the glass eye that Seth tracked down in the vanilla game as the source of the plague. But Seth doesn't seem to put any stock in that. He instead recommends that John clear out some more graveyards, which makes more than enough sense to him. This has us doing the exact same type of mission that we started with, though seeing characters that are recognizable from the main game pop up from graves is kinda fun. Also, those spitter zombies start to join in now too. Look, you can only get so original with this stuff. Man, Left 4 Dead really defined video game zombies, huh? You know, if I were in charge of an original zombie creation, I would have created one that had a really long tongue to restrict people. And maybe it coughs a lot. I'd call it the Choker. Man, I'm good at this. Alright, so clearing the graveyard surprisingly does nothing to actually stop this plague, and returning to Seth has him dancing around with a whole crew of zombies now. He's like Michael Jackson, except, you know, without the young boys. John tries for an unreasonable amount of time to get any semblance of knowledge from Seth, which I don't know why he'd try for this long, but I guess he's desperate? Seth simply tells him to go to Mexico, which we wouldn't have figured to do without his insight, I suppose. Wes Dickens, on the other hand, is trying to con people in this dire time, as you might expect. He claims that his elixir will repel the dead, but it's actually that boomer bile that I mentioned earlier. So he sends you to collect herbs with the idea that he's trying to cure the disease. I forgot that there's a whole item in this game to help reveal herbs on the map, which caused me to fumble around for a half hour trying to find the right plants. When I gather all of them, it turns out that Wes Dickens has created explosive munitions that light the dead on fire. Which, yes, cool, but I don't need more weaponry. John does though, as he agrees to pick up some parts in exchange for the last DLC exclusive weapon, the blunderbuss. It does this. Yeah, alright. I do gotta say that while this DLC doesn't really expand on the personalities of the companions that you initially met at the start of the vanilla game, it is cool to see more of them, which is something that I was missing when I played through it. I know this whole thing doesn't really work without its undead namesake, but these types of interactions would have been cool to witness in the third act of the game in particular, making it seem like John didn't just up and forget them. Though, to be fair, that kinda seems like it would be par for the course for the cowboy. Wes Dickens decides to try to hoof it to Mexico, but the borders are closed. John's young enough by comparison to don a US Army uniform and try to take a train in, leading to a train sequence that's slightly less compelling than the already lackluster train sequences in the base game. I mean, yeah, it's an Old West train, but I personally find them boring. Maybe I just don't like trains. Mexico is just as fucked, if not more so, meaning that you get a fresh batch of towns to help out. At this stage, I'm definitely having fun. Things are campy, goofy, and overall just lighthearted despite the gravity of the situation, and that's how things are supposed to be. I know that the main game covers this in spades, but I am missing just a bit more seriousness from the story though. I guess just something that gets me a little more emotionally invested. That's really just my own preferences speaking though. I'm always ready for a good laugh, but mixing it in with something a little more down to earth would actually make this DLC shine for me. Mexico doesn't do much more for us on the emotionally invested front. In fact, I think it would have been better if De Santa or Allende were still alive. But I understand that the best place for this non-canon sideshow to start would be during John's time at the ranch with his family. Unfortunately though, nearly all of the important characters that could show up down here are either dead or gone. It's a huge letdown, which appropriately mirrors how I felt about the second act of the main game. Regardless, we meet up with a new character, Mother Superior, who leads the sisters in the church down here. She wants us to tie up an undead, which is the third or fourth time that that's been our objective. Her plan is to try out holy water as a remedy, though that only seems to momentarily stun the test subject. This leads us to the biggest graveyard mission yet, which takes forever to clear but does have De Santa rising up from the grave again. I don't know, I initially enjoyed the thrill of being restricted to the graveyard area as enemies swarm you, but after the second or third time I was a bit bored of it. I think to truly make it shine, the quote-unquote boss of the graveyard needed to have some kind of specialty to it. A unique move, more health, ability to use weapons, whatever. I mean, you've had multiple scenes with undead using tools or the like, you might as well have the occasional one wielding a gun or something. When we return to the mother, she seems to have completely given up on perfecting the holy water formula that she said she was going to work on, which kind of shows how the devs focused on the structure of this DLC. It's straightforward, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. You show up, you gain a new weapon, and you move on. It doesn't matter what the characters say they're going to do or work on. You've got your goods. And when you return to them, they just don't have anything new planned. For me, I'm not a big fan of the lip service dialogue that's only in place to get you to head into the next fight. But I get that this wasn't really the focus of the expansion. Regardless, the mother now points you towards Mexico's new president, Reyes, as the source of this plague. And I got excited about this because he's the only guy down here besides Ricketts who has shown up alive. And he had a great personality, he was fun to interact with and could really help this DLC's story to be more fun. But when you show up at his place, he's already turned and is chasing around a woman. So yeah, it's just landed down here in terms of familiar faces who can still talk. Now just before this at the church, John suddenly remarks that he's seen one of the sisters before. I hadn't noticed her face, but looking back through my recordings had me realizing that she does in fact show up in Blackwater initially, at the Sasquatch Hunter's hut, in the initial bounty quest, and in Armadillo when you're helping out the Marshal. That said, well, a lot of faces in this game kinda get reused from NPCs and the like. So, I guess that didn't really pan out the way these guys were hoping. Still, she's the one who Reyes is chasing around, revealing her to be more than a simple woman. She begins to guide John, prompting him to return an ancient mask that El Presidente stole from the royal tomb. This is the final mission, as our guide keeps babbling on and on about the sins of men, and how there never should have been a palace built atop such a sacred ruin, and blah blah blah. The environment is cool and all, but honestly the last graveyard was the tougher challenge. There's no boss zombie or anything like that, just the same old as we enter the center of the tomb. Returning the mask has John questioning whether or not he's being misled now that he's gotten this far.
Are you sure?
Of course I'm sure.
How do you know?
My name is Ayotioto.
Well shit, that answers everything. So here's where things get a bit weird. I tried looking up Ayotioto to see what the Aztec goddess was all about. And the most that I could find was a brief snippet on Wikipedia that denotes her as the goddess of mists, vanity, and fame. Clicking on the link takes us to Chachihuatique, a much more prominent figure in Aztec mythology. But I couldn't find hardly anything about Ayotioto besides on random small sites and people on Reddit regurgitating the small Wikipedia snippet. Plus a couple of random sites that have more details like godchecker.com. I mean, if Godchecker says it, it's gotta be true. Even stranger though was that I did find a German article that had a source attached to it of a text from 1905 by the National Museum of Mexico, which does in fact state that Ayoteotl is a manifestation of Chachihuatique, one that lords over fog, mist, and vapors. That led me to the Spanish Wikipedia article, which has one more source from 1992, the Ritual Dictionary of Nahua Voices. Even this Wikipedia page has issues with verification. So at this stage, I gotta think that this goddess has just faded into obscurity, and I kind of wonder if Rockstar just really tapped into some forgotten lore for it. If anyone has more concrete info on this goddess, I'd love to hear about it. But either way, the curse is lifted. John heads back home and lives comfortably with his wife and son for another, I don't know, couple of weeks or something. The epilogue has Seth's crazy ass running down into the tomb and snatching the mask, causing Marston to rise from the grave again to kick more ass. Unfortunately, you can't find Jack roaming around or do anything more than small side objectives while you free roam, but it is a fun and playful ending to all of this. I don't know, the Aztec goddess thing kinda came out of nowhere, but things did need to come to a head. It could have been a dozen things and all of them would have felt just as sudden as well. But I do wish that there was more foreshadowing of the curse stemming from an Aztec tomb rather than this woman just appearing here and there. Although I also think that there's not necessarily anything wrong with the ending in terms of it wrapping up a lighthearted and twisted version of reality. Undead Nightmare is definitely a great DLC. On the surface, it's a fun romp that has you blowing off steam and taking part in a B-movie type of horror game. And if that's all you need, there's nothing wrong with that. I personally would have loved a bit more substance in nearly every facet of the expansion to help push it into that amazing territory though. The base game already has tons of weapons, so pretty much all of the new stuff fell flat or was uninventive. I would have loved to see some trap type weapons that you could set up and have zombies run into, or had some mad scientist type harnessing electricity into a gun that chained lightning between the undead, or maybe more melee weapons that had stylized kills attached to them. The zombies themselves were also very straightforward and uninspired, their designs taking pointers from Left 4 Dead and not expanding any further. Honestly, this might have worked better if dismemberment was a thing, but that's a whole ass engine upgrade to get working, I'd imagine. But having every zombie die from only a headshot with traditional weapons gets old after the first hour, and that lack of variety really dampens the mood. I would have loved to have seen more inspired zombies that took that cowboy theme and ran with it. Ones that rode undead horses, ones that rolled downhill at you in a barrel of TNT, ones that could trip you up from afar with a lasso. Not the smoker. Shut up. This one's my real OC. I think at the bare minimum, having the undead die from significantly more torso shots would have been fine too. Just like a half a dozen shots or something might have made the gameplay a bit more fun. But as things stand, you're just shooting them once in the head over and over. And I think the main reason that this part overstayed its welcome was because most of the gameplay time was spent clearing towns. The first couple were definitely fun, but it's just the same thing repeatedly. Had some towns been just a tad different, it could have had enough variance to keep things fresh. A town where a shitty group of survivors are killing anyone who comes near it, and you have to choose whether to gun them down or attract a horde of zombies to the town that they're in. A town where the zombies are particularly sensitive to noise and will swarm anyone who screams out or shoots. Maybe one where it's just fucking bears. You know what I mean? Just fucking bears. A town of bears. God, I'm such a good armchair game designer. And finally, my last issue is just the story direction. Without the Strangers missions, the main story is short and really only involves Seth, Wes Dickens, and a new character who's a stereotypical church lady. Nun. They're called nuns. And then suddenly it's like,
this is your obscure Aztec goddess speaking. We're gonna be returning a mask to its stone. Should be wrapping up the DLC, ETA 5 minutes over.
I just would have liked a bit more camaraderie between old acquaintances, a bit more build-up, something to sink my teeth into. Maybe Reyes is commanding the zombies with the mask, or you could actively team up with allies to clear out towns. Or Bill and Javier are down in Mexico with their minds intact, trying to raise an army of the undead. I don't know, lots of ideas that are still goofy but have more substance. I wouldn't say that Undead Nightmare is as good as I remember, but again, it's not bad. Many of my ideas would have needed a lot more time to implement, and some of them would have required the game to have more resources than it did. I'm not delusional in that fact. But I do think that it needed a bit more push to get there for me. It's a very fun idea that paid its respects to the genre that it was emulating, and I can't deny that I still had fun for the majority of it. Rockstar did a great job with something that was essentially side content, one that capitalized on the zombie fever that was sweeping the world of entertainment. And I'd actually be completely on board for them to make a whole game revolving around the concept if they were willing to work out the kinks. Thanks for watching. This, might be the shortest damn video I've done in years. I already see the comments. I know, I'm here with you. Actually, I'd go so far as to say that I'm livid with this channel now. But yeah, with the real life shit that I've got going on, I'm hoping to fire this quick one off and then hit something real meaty for November or December. I'm doing my best over here. Until then though, I've got merch over at my merch site. It tastes like cloth and ceramics mostly. Might have a bit of glue in there somewhere. I have a Twitch where, I think I'm streaming again. Maybe. I have a Twitter where I'm slowly melting with every tweet that I send. I have a Discord where people chat and hang out and send shitty memes in the meantime. And I have a Patreon. And that's it. Have a good one.